get to it. Boom. We're here. War Rapport. Um, Formalities. I always got to make sure I get the formalities out of the way before we get too deep off into this thing. If you are not already, you need to make sure that you're following us on social media. That's Twitter and Instagram, The War Rapport. We are The War Rapport. We're here giving you the best of Auburn sports from a fan's perspective. If you're on YouTube right now and you're seeing the show, make sure you're clicking that like button and hitting subscribe so you get notifications. Be a part of that notification team. When we go live, you can know about the upcoming shows. Other than that, you've got the crew in here tonight. I am your man, Ike Jones. You can find me at GI the Artist on Instagram and Twitter. My man, Mike G, is in here with Mike Gittens as the Twitter. And then you got Caesar Walker in here on Twitter as well, tweeting at Caesar Walker. Let's get to it. The week that was in college football, it was actually a really good week for college football. There was a lot of things that happened, a lot of noteworthy things that are going to impact the college football playoff picture. Mike, talk to us a little bit about some of the things that we saw from this past weekend, other than our game, which we'll talk about how that has ramifications. But if you want to hear our take on our game, we talked about that last night. So go back and watch that video. We're going to talk about other things. So, yeah, moving on.
Well, probably the biggest news coming out of the weekend was Tua's hip injury. He went down during that game. Freak accident. Two Mississippi State players landed on him, and he was screaming in pain on the field. So they carted him off. They put him in an ambulance and took him to a local hospital. He's definitely done for this season. So on behalf of the War Report, we're wishing him a speedy recovery. Hip injuries end careers sometimes, so it was really tough to watch that. Beside his Bama affiliation, Tua is one of those guys that's just really easy to root for. I like him a lot. I think he's a good young man. I think he's got a great head on his shoulders. Comes from a good family and represents the best of that university. So, we hope that he gets better and that this isn't the last that we've seen of him. Whether it be on the college level or on the pro level. So how that affects the playoff, though, is that the committee now has a decision to make about where Bama fits, because right now they've got Bama as their first team out. And a Tua-less Bama is a different Bama. They're not as dangerous. It takes a dangerous element away from their offense. So I'll be interested to see, over the next couple of weeks, how the committee treats this injury. Do you judge them on their body of work, or do you pre-penalize them based on this injury? I think that Mac Jones has come in and shown that he's capable of running this offense. He's not Tua. He's not going to be Tua. Saban's not going to ask him to be that. He's going to just try to put him in a position to make just enough plays for them to win. And he's got the weapons to throw to, that's for sure. So, these guys, you throw it anywhere near those four receivers Bama's got, and they're catching it and they're making plays. So he doesn't even have to be the greatest quarterback for them to stay in the conversation, I think.
Yeah. I mean, definitely they still need a lot of help, though. Like, I don't know that it's just going to be about the merit of whether or not Bama can make it in on their record. They need a ton of help in front of them. They need Georgia to lay an egg in the SEC championship game because a Georgia win or a competitive Georgia still makes Georgia a better team to me, even though Georgia would have 2 losses. And considering that, and you've got, Oklahoma still has an outside chance of getting in there. They'd have to beat Baylor a second time to do that. So would Baylor be a good enough team as would that be a quality enough win? Because who's Bama going to tout as their quality win? The best team that they honestly would have faced would have been LSU. Second best team is going to be us in a couple of weeks. So who is Bama's quality win? I don't see that on their schedule right now. So they need a ton of help. They need for either Ohio State or Penn State to go. One of them, of course, is going to have to lose. They play each other this coming weekend. So Ohio State, if they handle business, they're going to be going into the end of their season undefeated against Michigan. If you go back a couple of weeks, I already said I think they lose one of those 2 games anyway. So a one-loss Ohio State is still someone who they have to contend with. Clemson, They're in there, right? So you're going to have Clemson in there. You're going to have the winner of the SEC championship game. Bama's hoping that winner is not Georgia. If Georgia wins, you've got Clemson, you've got LSU, who likely has already punched their ticket, win or lose in the SEC championship. If Georgia wins, Georgia's that third team. And I think that fourth team is going to be a Big Ten representative, barring Ohio State having a ridiculous collapse and they lose to both Penn State and Michigan. So Bama needs a ton of help. Ton of help.
Yeah. Caesar, what do you think?
Bama's still a very dangerous team. Knee-jerk reaction is that when Tua went down, I thought Bama's playoff hopes went down with him. But when you look who's behind Bama, I'm looking at Oregon. I'm looking at Oklahoma. I'm looking at Utah. Bama still has a shot, but like you guys previously said, it comes down to what Georgia does in the SEC championship, basically. Ohio State, I mean, to your point, Mike, Ohio State is getting a lot of love. So should they lose, I'm not quite so. I mean, Michigan, I think Michigan has a good shot of beating them because I think that's a road game for Ohio State. So
Right.
that game we're going to be watching closely just because I think that sets up to be a perfect trap game right before the playoffs for them or the conference championship. Penn State, they still got Penn State this week, if I'm not mistaken. So again, they will be battle tested even before they get to Michigan.
And then look at this. Like, Michigan's only lost to Wisconsin. That's the only team they lost to so far.
They got two losses.
They got
two losses.
Who else they lost to? I think they do have two losses.
Who was their second loss to?
They got. Let's look this up real quick. Yeah, they're sitting on 2. They're 8-2. That second loss is looking like.
Was it Penn State?
Yeah, it was Penn State, 28-21.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So yeah.
It's Minnesota's the other one.
They're trying to talk up Oregon. They're trying to talk up Oregon. I don't know, guys. I'll be surprised they put a Pac-10 school ahead of Bama. I'll be surprised.
Right.
Oregon's done.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. I disagree with both those statements, and I'm gonna give you guys some proof here. The committee has already shown us what they think of Bama because I thought after that loss to LSU that they will fall a little further than 5. And when they fell only to 5, I was like, okay, so there's not a whole lot Bama can do to go any lower than what they are right now. I mean, the only way that they drop any lower than 5 is if they lose to Auburn. You know, there are not a lot of other opportunities for the teams remaining left to do anything that's going to jump them over Bama because they've arguably already done it to this point. So
Penn State winning this weekend would do that.
Yeah, but then if Ohio State turns around and loses to Michigan, what does that win really mean, right? So I think the more I think there's a plausible scenario.
We're making a big assumption that Ohio State loses 2 in a row, though.
Yeah, but I said it on a previous show that I thought that could be likely. So we haven't seen them. Remember what we said about teams that really haven't been battle tested, and then all of a sudden they find themselves in a dogfight against a better school, and then suddenly things start to fall apart quickly. So I still think that there's a little bit of chaos here. I think that the least complicated scenario in this whole picture right now is SEC champion makes it. If for some reason that SEC champion is Georgia, I don't think that there's anything LSU can do short of just getting completely wiped off the field in that game that knocks them out of the top 4 at this point. They have the clear Heisman Trophy front runner at quarterback. He had great numbers this weekend. He threw for almost 500 yards and 5 TDs or something crazy like that. And, you know, their only loss will be at a neutral site, you know, to what will be the 2 or 3 team come SEC championship time. Clemson is in, right? Because they're not going to lose. So you've got the SEC champion and you've got Clemson. you possibly have the SEC runner-up if Georgia wins that game. If LSU wins, Georgia's out, and I still think that Bama is the next team up because the teams that are behind them right now, Oregon and Utah, don't have enough left on their schedule to prove that they're better than Bama at this point. They just don't. That's why I think the Pac's out in a scenario where where Georgia wins the SEC championship. Or if LSU wins it, I still think that at this point, Bama is the next team in. We'll find out Tuesday night. If the committee still has Bama at 5, it gets a lot harder for everybody else. So the Pac has a tough road to hoe. I think their most likely scenario for getting into this playoff is that
we beat Bama.
Georgia loses.
Chaos.
Yeah, Georgia loses.
They need chaos.
Georgia loses, which knocks them out. We beat Bama, which also knocks them out, and then Oregon is the next team up. Right, I think that's the most likely.
I still think that that Oklahoma has a better shot. Either the winner of the Big 12, I think, is still in a better position than Oregon or Utah as a one-loss team.
I agree.
They're the second. How far do you think the committee jumps Oklahoma after the Baylor win?
I don't know. I think they're going to be in the top 7 or 8. So I think Penn State is probably going to be, if I were trying to anticipate where it's going to be right now, we'd have LSU, Ohio State, Clemson as 1, 2, 3. The 4th team likely is going to be Georgia.
Right.
You're probably going to, Bama didn't do anything that would necessarily make them, unless they're just going to be playing the schedule out in front. Bama should still be number 5. Number 6 is likely going to be Penn State. And then you're going to have, I'd say, you're probably either going to have Oregon or Oklahoma right there at the next spot. Baylor probably drops down out of the top 10, likely, but.
Yeah.
I think that Oklahoma jumps Penn State in the committee's rankings this week.
Jumps Penn State?
They gave Baylor. Yeah, they're sitting at 10.
I agree with that.
Yeah, Penn State sitting at 9, right? And I think that they jump Penn State. I think they jump Utah, and they're sitting behind Oregon and Bama, at 7 this week.
So let's see. The AP, which of course that's not the overall poll that matters, has Bama at 5, Oregon at 6, Utah at 7, Oklahoma at 8, Penn State at 9, and Florida sitting there at 10. Let's see. The last college football playoff rankings had it with, let's see, Oregon 6, Utah 7, Oklahoma 8. Yeah, Oklahoma was ahead of Penn State already. Now, that's still the AP. That's not, I want to see the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah.
So I got it right here. So the last college football playoff rankings had Oklahoma at 10.
10, yeah.
And what I'm saying is Minnesota lost, so they're out. I think that Oklahoma, with a quality win, comeback win on the road, with probably who is the Heisman runner-up right now, definitely moves ahead of Minnesota. They jump Penn State, and they possibly jump Utah into the 7th spot.
I wouldn't be mad at that. So you're saying the top, let's say the top 6 teams right now: LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Oregon, and then Oklahoma as 7.
Correct.
And
nothing has happened this weekend. Go ahead,
Oklahoma still has a dangerous game coming up on the 30th on the road against Oklahoma State. So we'll keep an eye on them if they can win out. It's not like they have the red carpet rolled out to win the rest of their games. So we'll see how they shake out too.
And they still have to play Baylor again in the title game for the conference. So they've got 2 tough games left on their schedule. Ohio State still got 2 tough games left on their schedule. Penn State is still got to play Ohio State next weekend. Who does Penn State end the season with?
Let's see here. The old Nittany Lions, right? Penn State ends their season with Rutgers, so nothing to worry about there unless they lay a complete egg. So they got Ohio State, Rutgers left on the schedule.
Yeah, so like I said, Penn State still got a path in. They beat Ohio State. They beat Rutgers. They have a shot to still get in there. And that's again, to me, that's a disaster scenario for Alabama. Is Penn State winning next weekend? Because I think that's a quality W, and I don't. And who on Alabama's schedule has a quality win? They don't have one.
Right.
We would have been one had we beat Georgia, but by that point,
they needed us to beat Georgia, and then they could say we beat Auburn.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think that all the committees and the rankings have kind of respected that all our losses have come by a touchdown or less. To teams currently ranked in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And then we still have a win against a top 16. Right. And they're just bordering top 10. So I still think everybody has universally recognized that this Auburn defense is championship level. If they can muster a win on the road against us, I still think it counts for something. In the committee's thinking. So we'll see how that goes. I think that Bama has a better shot than a lot of people think to still get in this. I think there are a lot of scenarios that put them in there.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm not counting them out completely. I do think though that there are 4 teams that are clearly ahead of them right now. I actually think that they're probably by the end of this will be 4 teams ahead of them. That's my whole point. It's like I think that they're going to be on the outside looking in. They still have a shot, but they need a ton of chaos in front of them to make that happen. They need some help.
It's happened before. And now that I think about it, I think, Mike, I say that, but I'm still thinking of it as Bama with Tua. I think it's impressive to go on the road with Mac Jones and beat Auburn. Right. That would be impressive in the voters' eyes. With Tua, maybe not so much because you kind of already think that they're the better team already with Tua. But with Mac Jones, first start, hostile environment, big rivalry game, he pulls it out. I think that would impress some voters.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I said they definitely have a path to get in. I'm not discounting them at all yet. There's a lot of stuff that's still got to happen. And they're one of the few teams that doesn't control their own fate, though. Like everyone ahead of them controls their own fate.
That's true.
Right.
And 2 of those 3 teams are pretty much solidified going to make it. Like LSU's really got to fall apart. Clemson's really got to fall apart.
My dream scenario is Georgia beats LSU and both those teams still get in the playoff. Like that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see the Pac shut out, and I would possibly like to see the Big Ten shut out somehow and Oklahoma get in.
I'm intrigued by Georgia because they have the squad to beat LSU. Definitely. They have a good defense and they have a good enough offense.
Yeah, I would agree that of the teams that can beat LSU, Georgia is one of them, just because their defense is good. And I mean, if you look at, and this is where we'll bring Auburn back into the conversation about like how both of those teams played against us, right? So Georgia, how we were able to limit LSU from scoring was we were making the short passing game a catch and that's it. Like you're not getting any additional yards. Georgia's got the guys on the outside that can do that. They've got the ability to shut the run down just like we do. I just think they have the athletes to be able to play with LSU's athletes on the outside. And conversely to that, we were able to put up some points against LSU. Georgia's got a better offense than we do. So I think that Georgia poses a super huge threat to LSU to be able to win the SEC championship. If they win that game, I think Georgia should be in. Yeah, I don't see how.
Has Georgia's secondary been tested this year? That'd be my only concern for Georgia.
I'd have to go look at what the statistics were in that South Carolina game that led to them losing the game. I know turnovers played a big part in that. I think they had 3 picks they might have thrown in that game. I don't know. I mean, of course, any scores that would have gone up against Georgia had to have been passing scores because their first rushing touchdown given up. Ta-da! Against us. So
South Carolina, Helinski had a game manager type game versus them. 15 for 20 for 116 yards and a TD.
yeah, that's nothing.
I mean, they ran for 142 yards on Georgia's defense, which is actually one of the higher rushing totals that they've given up this year. I think it's the highest rushing total they've given up this year. And man, let me see. No fumbles
when
lost.
I think of what about Notre Dame? Did Notre Dame were they able to throw on them?
They moved the ball a bit. I mean, that was still kind of a defensive game. I think moving kind of forward. I just think, again, we've talked about this a couple times about the transitive property of who played who, right? And with Auburn as a common opponent and using our defense as a base to judge each offense, they both scored about the same amount of points on us. Georgia put up 21. LSU bested them by 2 points, but Joe Burrow had a much better game against our defense than Jake Fromm did. Mm-hmm. And if our defense, if we call the defenses equal, I think Georgia has a slight advantage in this game, right? Like, I really do. I think that we moved the ball on their defense much better than we did on Georgia's defense. So if they play the same kind of defensive game against us, against Georgia, I think Fromm has a much better day. Plus, they have the defense to slow, LSU down just enough to win that game. I don't think that they're scoring 40-something points on Georgia's defense. I don't think that's happening, right? So, if they hold them to 21, I like Georgia's chances in this game because I don't think that their defense can hold Georgia to 21.
Yeah, and LSU's defense is not the same of old. Again, they're not the same defense that we were accustomed to in the past when they were 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Right, they're an offensive football team now.
Yeah, and I actually think that the magic number for LSU is 24. LSU's got to score at least 24 points to win that game. If they score over 24, I think they've got a shot to win. If Georgia holds LSU, I'll go ahead and call this way out in advance. Georgia holds LSU to under 24 points. Georgia's winning that game.
I agree with that.
Just because I feel like LSU's going to I don't know that LSU's defense can reproduce the effort our defense did against Georgia.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Like, you look at how LSU's defense has played against teams that have either been balanced or can actually put up points. It's a track meet. Like, look at the Texas game. I know that was early in the season, but that was a track meet of a game.
Listen, a better gauge are the terrible teams they played. They just gave up 37 to Ole Miss yesterday.
Look at Alabama. Look at the Alabama game. Like, other than first half they were dominant, but like they literally let Bama back into that game. They pulled off of it, but Bama was able to get something going in the second half of that game. I just don't know that LSU's defense can produce enough chaos to stop a fairly balanced Georgia team also having a really great defense to put them in good field position and apparently a kicker with a bionic leg. So, I just don't know where they're going to manufacture the field position necessary. They're going to have to hope for turnovers. And Georgia just hasn't been giving the ball up too much.
Right.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I really feel, though, that at the end of this, there are multiple scenarios that see two SEC teams getting into this playoff. The rest of college football hates that, right? But I think that when you look at the top three in the SEC right now, Tuesday's rankings are going to tell us a lot. Listen, if nobody's jumped Bama this week and they're still sitting at number 5, I'm not sure what happens in the coming weeks that changes that if they win next week and then beat us to end their season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, but we'll see how it comes out.
They win out. Their worst case scenario is they're still sitting at number 5, just at the door, waiting for somebody to let them in.
Yeah. But other key things from this weekend. to jump around to something that you teased earlier, which I don't think you're going to find any disagreement, is the Heisman Trophy race. At this point, I think Joe Burrow might as well just go ahead and get his best suit ready. You know, whoever wants to do some sort of sponsorship thing to make sure Joe is wearing your line or whatever as he's going up there to receive his Heisman Trophy, you need to be putting those phone calls in right now. And yeah, it's his lose. And literally the only way he loses that is if he goes out and either gets injured, which God forbid he does that, or he throws like a ton of interceptions in these last two games. I just don't see it. I don't see it. And the only other people who are even in the picture, you know, in the race right now are Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields. That's it. Like everybody else, it's a 3-horse race, and Joe Burrow is Usain Bolt right now with a couple of body length distance on everybody else. He's just gotta finish at this point because he's winning the race clearly.
Yeah,
well, 38 touchdowns. Go ahead.
He was. I'm joking, but I think he was working on his acceptance speech towards the end of last night's game. Like he got this locked down, man.
Yeah.
He's leading. How many touchdowns, Mike?
38 touchdowns versus 6 interceptions on the season.
That is video game-esque, man. So no, he's again. You basically laid it out. I agree. He has to either get injured or have a meltdown of epic proportions against Georgia. Which is why I asked, has Georgia been tested in the air this year like LSU will test them? Because to me, that's the matchup to watch. How successful will Joe Burrow be throwing the ball against that Georgia defense? They like to give the LSU likes to set up and give him short throws to set up. They gave it to us, but I don't know if Georgia does that with LSU. So how does he adjust and how does he make the throws he needs to make?
Yeah, if Georgia plays defensively the way they played against us, LSU's going to shred them.
They would be crazy to do that.
They're going to walk the ball all up and down the field against them because that slant route, like if we're hitting slant route consistently, LSU is going to feast on those. Because Joe Burrow is not missing a ton of those. Like you're just not giving those to him and expecting to come out of there with a W. Like that's not a winning proposition. They're going to have to play again similarly to how we set up against them, which is we're going to squat on everything short, and we're going to try to play outside leverage on everything. So your outside receivers aren't going to have in-breaking routes with clean releases. You're going to have to do a lot of back shoulder stuff, a lot of corner routes with, you know, some sort of out-breaking route, speed outs type of stuff to get to the boundary. And if you're giving up the middle of the field, that's a field day. That's a field day.
Right.
You know, I think that from a statistical standpoint, Jalen Hurts is a lot closer to Joe Burrow than people are realizing because I think what really hurts them. Yeah, what really hurts him is that he's gone against a lesser competition as well too. But I thought he helped his case a lot last night in that comeback against Baylor. I mean, he had some untimely turnovers, but at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who scored 43 touchdowns, 15 on the ground, 28 through the air. He's thrown for 3,000 yards, and he's just shy of 1,000-yard rushing season by like 13 yards. So, I mean, he's really – I mean, those are numbers that we saw from like Cam and Tim Tebow when they won the Heisman. So, you know, his team's success, I think his conference kind of hurts him a little bit. Their schedule kind of hurts his chances a little bit. But they're about even in total yards gained. Joe Burrow has thrown for 3,800 yards so far this season. You know, and Jalen Hurts has gained about 4,000 yards from scrimmage, but throwing and passing. So he's a true dual threat, you know, on that team. I'll just be really interested to see how they end up weighing it out at the end of the day. I think for him to have a shot to beat out Burrow, Oklahoma has to somehow find their way into the playoff picture.
Right. Yeah, and that's why I said that loss is really what's preventing it to be a true conversation. Like had they been able to come back and win that game against Kansas State, he might still be in in distance to be able to reach him. And it would be a lot more pressure on Joe Burrow to finish the season out strong. I think Joe Burrow's just he can limp his way to the finish line at this point in time, just because LSU's undefeated. And he hasn't done anything to contribute to anybody's mind and be like, I don't know, because he can't do, like, what has he not done? He's played in tough games and looked unfazed. He's gone out there against quality defenses and gotten W's. He has not turned the ball over a ton. Like you say, you just talked about his touchdown to interception ratio. It's ridiculous. So there just isn't much else that he needs to show anybody to say that he's not the best player in college football this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Jalen is the one that's got to go out there and put, like, he needs like a 7 touchdown game or something with no interceptions to even make this a conversation right now.
Yeah, he has to do something. Yeah, I feel with Jalen, when, to your point, when he lost against Kansas State, it was Joe Burrow. It was his turn to prove to us, okay, why should you be the Heisman? And whenever you have a quarterback like that, all you got to do is go to Tuscaloosa and prove why you should win the Heisman. And you look at past Heisman winners out of the SEC. What have they done? They've gone to Tuscaloosa and beat Bama, right? And so I think winning a game like that, of that magnitude, pretty much proved to people, yeah, Jalen's great, but he lost to Kansas State, and I beat Bama on the road. And
what happens if he lays a dud against Georgia, though? What happens if he lays a dud against Georgia?
Then Jalen's got to have some Herculean performance in the last 2 games. Like, I still think a dud. When we say dud, like, he's going to have to, like, throw 3 picks and they lose that game. But I'm saying even with that, Jalen still has to have a great game as well. Like, it can't just be Jalen has okay game and then he has a terrible game at the end of the season. Like, he's got to have a terrible game and a great game from Jalen.
Listen, if you look at his stats, he's been having nothing but great games. He hasn't had a terrible game yet.
Yeah, right. I guarantee you there's a couple of things that need to happen. Not only does he need to continue to play great, but they've got to win as well. So he can play great and they get an L and he still wouldn't get it.
To answer your question, if he lays an egg in a championship game, and let's say Jalen in Oklahoma runs the table, yes, we have a race on our hands for the Heisman, because by this point, Hurts will have played Oklahoma State and Baylor again, and those are quality wins, big time games, and if he balls out there, we got a tight race.
Yeah, I think that it's more likely that we see Burrow lay an egg against Georgia's defense than it is that Jalen's going to have a bad game or Oklahoma's going to catch a second L before the end of the season. Personally, he's completing 73% of his passes and he's a running threat. And
it's tough to beat a team twice, though, man. Like, that's my only thing. It's like, not saying Baylor's all that great, but they had to come back to win that game. It's not as if Oklahoma dominated them. So, like, Baylor's not going into that rematch thinking we can't compete with these guys. They're thinking they can win the game. So it's tough to beat a team twice. And he's going to need, like I said, he's going to need a Herculean effort and a W. They can't lose the game.
So let me ask you this while we're playing scenarios. Burrow lays an egg, but Jalen balls out but loses one of the next few games.
It's still Burrow.
It's still Burrow.
It's still Burrow. Yeah.
So basically, Jalen has to play perfect,
and he's got to have his defense
for Georgia to shut down Burrow. Basically,
yeah. Jalen's got to play well. Oklahoma's got to manufacture some defense, and Georgia's defense has got to terrorize Joe Burrow, and that's the only way he does it. If that happens, though, and that is a crazy scenario that I don't know will happen. That'd be 3 years in a row for Oklahoma having a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback, which is insane.
Hey, listen, man, they prove they can develop them. I mean, they have a history of that. So, I mean, that'll be like the third. That'll be like the fourth. I mean, Jason White won the Heisman there under Bob Stoops. I mean, they Sam Bradford, they've kind of been quarterback U for a minute, at least on the college level. A lot of those guys haven't gone to the NFL and done much. Yeah, haven't done much. But I mean, Kyler Murray looks good in the league right now.
Yeah,
Baker
keep an eye on
Mayfield
him.
starting. Yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield's starting on an NFL squad. So, again, I want to just reiterate, Jalen Hurts is going to finish the season strong no matter what. Statistically, his numbers are going to be, I'm going to say, better. The only thing that Burrow probably can't get Jalen on is completion percentage. He's got 76% completion percentage. Georgia could ruin that in the SEC championship game. I just think it's more likely that Georgia's defense shows up and foils Burrow than it is that Oklahoma loses and Jalen lays an egg before the end of the season. So, all that to say, I think we have a tight race on our hands. Between the two. Everybody's kind of giving it to Burrow right now. Right now, I'm giving it to Burrow. But yeah, I don't think Jalen is as far back as some people seem to think.
It's not over. It's a lot of football left to be played. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think other than that, the only other things in this college football race, the only other team I think that has anybody close again in this race is going to be Justin Fields. And I just don't know that even with Oklahoma, blowing guys off the field or terrorizing teams with their great defense and him putting up a lot of great numbers, I don't know that there's anything Justin Fields can do at this point to get into this. Like he would literally have to put up like 6 or 7 touchdowns in both of these last 2 games in the regular season. They're going to have to either that or he's going to have to do something like what Jalen just did, which is lead a comeback against Penn State or Michigan, who both have really great defenses. Like he's going to have to do something Herculean to even be in this conversation.
Right. But here's the problem with that scenario. If he's leading a comeback, that means that he did a bunch of bad stuff before they needed a comeback.
Not necessarily.
Right?
They could have fumble issues, like they could muff a punt or something like that. Defense gives up like 2 or 3, freaking situations where somebody like punt return touchdown. Like there's a bunch of scenarios in which Justin Fields doesn't play bad and they're behind in this game. But he literally needs that to happen, and then he leads his team on a comeback for it to happen. Because Jalen had a bad game. He was responsible for both of those first tumblers. Like that pick that he threw was terrible. The fumble that he had was all on him. He still led the comeback, and that's the reason why he continues to be in this conversation. Justin Fields needs one of those games where it's looking bad, and he leads Ohio State back to a victory in order to even just get into the conversation again. Like we're not even talking about him winning. We're talking about him getting in the conversation because right now it's a 2-horse race. I
think Justin Fields is your Heisman front runner next year. Once these guys are out of the way, right?
Tua's gone.
I think it's a 2-man race this year, and Fields will be the guy next year leading. He will be the guy they'll be talking about in the offseason for the upcoming Heisman in 2020.
There's literally no other person that is currently in college football that would be coming back that would still be in that conversation. Jonathan Taylor's gone. Tua's going to be gone.
Trevor Lawrence is gone.
He's
not going to come back.
Yeah, Joe Burrow's going to be gone. Justin Herbert is going to be gone. Who else was getting Heisman hype before the season started? I think that's pretty much it. That covers the list. Yeah, so he'd be the only guy returning that would have some sort of Heisman hype. That'd be interesting to look at who is going to have Heisman hype coming into next year as we get into the postseason talk of what we got coming up for the next year. Who are going to be the early Heisman front runners, but we'll save that for another show.
I have a question. With one law, is Minnesota out? Are they out of this discussion completely?
Not completely. They've got to win in the Big Ten championship, though.
Yeah, when I say out of the discussion, I don't believe that they'll make the top 4. But do they have, how they finish? Are they going to have an impact on this race in some way?
Only by winning in the Big Ten championship.
They have to win it all to shake up some things.
Yeah, they've got to win out the remainder of their games to even be in the conversation anymore. Yes, but that's their only shot outside of that, because they didn't do themselves any favors by losing yesterday.
And I'm not sure. So, what's your question?
Let me ask you this then. if right now they're sitting at 9-1 at the top of the Big Ten West.
Right.
If for some reason they make, because this is a scenario we haven't talked about, they make the Big Ten championship game, because I believe they were only sitting at 8, so this loss is going to drop them down, 13, 15, something like that, I think. But if they win the Big Ten, how much further do you move them back in the conversation? I don't see them jumping from 15-4. I don't think they have the juice left on their schedule.
No,
to
I don't
do
think
that.
they can get back in. I think they're just going to play spoilers for someone else who should be in. That's their
Right.
only
So,
shot.
but that might be the Pac's best chance to make this playoff, though. Minnesota beats either Penn State or Ohio State, right? And then nobody from the Big Ten makes it in the top 4, because your SEC champion is in, right? Clemson is in, and that leaves 2 spots, right? So if Utah or Oregon presumably are going to have to play each other, so that's going to hash itself out. And they're tight. They're right next to each other in this race at 7 and 8, or 6 and 7 or whatever. I think that's the Pac's best chance to get into this play. I think Minnesota still plays a pretty impactful role in what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I won't disagree with
They
that.
played Wisconsin. They got their last game of the season is Wisconsin.
Right. So they're going to have
a
quality win.
there. There'll be a quality win there. They win that. They go to the conference. If I am Oregon and I went out, I am a Golden Gopher fan, basically, because that's
Oregon,
the chaos.
Oregon needs to be rooting for us this weekend, number one, because they need for us to remove Bama from the conversation. So everybody in Duck Land is rooting for Auburn this coming weekend. They are likely rooting for Penn State to give Ohio State 1 loss, so that when it gets to the Big Ten championship, they can root for Minnesota to beat Ohio State, because that, again, they need a ton of help. They need so much help to get in. Right now, it's sitting well, but they need us to win. Oregon needs us to win that game.
Well, in more ways than one, right? They need us to win to maintain the appearance of a quality loss.
Correct.
Right? I mean, because you're not going to get in over any other school if you lost to the 5th best team in a conference with a freshman QB. Like, they need us to win. They need Bo to pull at least one of these top 10. I mean, this will be 5th top 10 game of the year, which is crazy. But they need it. They need it. They need it. They should be screaming War Eagle over there in Eugene for the rest of the season.
For sure.
Yeah.
They need us to show up and win in the worst way to even be in the conversation. Now, I'm going to say this. I don't care if they get in. They don't have a shot to win the national championship.
No.
Yeah,
there's none of those already in there. Yeah, listen, if we beat them, it's a drubbing by Georgia. It's an extra drubbing by LSU. I don't think they have the horses to beat Clemson. They'll be kind of like a default team if they get in. A bunch of other people lost, and they got this one okay looking loss to Auburn, so we'll put them in there as filler.
Yeah.
They're that stuff that you find in the ceiling. Oregon's that stuff you find in the ceiling. They're like asbestos or something. And it's like, it's here. We didn't want it, but it's here, and it makes us sick. So, I don't really believe in Oregon too much. I think that Justin Herbert. I really like Justin Herbert. I think he's a great quarterback. I just don't think they have the athletes. Mario Cristobal is building a different type Oregon standard there. They beefed up their offensive line. That kind of undersized, undermanned thing that Chip Kelly was doing that got him dominated in that national title game against Cam in 2010. They've kind of turned the page on that, and they're playing a lot bigger than they have in the past. Cristobal comes from the Saban coaching tree, so there was no way he was going to come in there and play with a bunch of undersized linemen. I just think they're doing some great things. They're not there yet. I dislike Oregon. They're one of those schools I never root for, but I'm telling you, as objectively as I can, they're not even if they make it in, they're not a factor. I think for the 3 teams that likely make it, in with them, you're gifting a win to whoever has to play them.
I don't disagree at all. Like I don't see a path, even if they with all the help in the world, if they get it in, that they can still like they're gonna need, oh my gosh, so much help.
They're not even a sexy pick.
Yeah, they
Anyway.
need fluky stuff to happen.
Like you got Oklahoma out there with Jalen Hurts, his story this year. Like it's there are teams ahead of them that from a visibility standpoint, Oklahoma just that's going to that's going to round out your top four, provided something happens to Georgia, right? I think and Bama doesn't get in. I think that Oklahoma, like you have sexier teams ahead of Oregon, who are top to bottom. You can say better. So, yeah, I again, like you said, they need the next 2 weekends have to be chaotic for Oregon to get a shot.
Yep, and I just don't see it playing out that way. Like I said, there's a ton of scenarios I can see, but it's not one of them that I can see with Oregon getting in there, and we'll see. I mean, we can come back next week and be talking about this and say, "Man, I did not expect that to happen," and it happened. I just don't. Yeah, I don't see a path for them to get in right now. So we'll see what happens this coming Saturday.
I think this playoff needs Jalen Hurts, man. I think it's going to be a shame to not see him.
I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for
him so hard. Yeah, I really want to see that guy in there, on the big stage. I think he earned that. I thought he earned it at Bama. I think he was a class act when he got, benched for Tua. He did things the right way. He went to Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley really, really, played on his strengths and made him into a draft pick. He made him into a prospect, a real draft prospect at quarterback.
Right.
So, he'll be at the combine proving whether he can do it or not. Yeah, it just would be a shame not to see the best talent on the biggest stage. And I think that he's one of the best talents, evidenced by the fact that he's, second in the Heisman race right now. So
he's an incredible athlete.
Yeah, I mean, just a great guy, man. All around, he's a smart football player. He's disciplined. He may not be the best thrower of the ball, but listen, he made CeeDee Lamb into the best receiver in the country this year.
That's another thing that we have not talked about yet is the Biletnikoff race, which I think is going to be a super interesting thing coming down to like whether or not it's going to be somebody like Jerry Jeudy from Alabama, or whether it's CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, or what's the kid from LSU that gave us the blues? Chase
Jefferson?
Nah, not Jefferson. It was Chase. What is his name, man? Come on. Let me look it up real quick.
LSU?
Jamar Chase. That's the kid. Jamar Chase is, I think, he's a candidate out there. Trying to think who else is the kid from Florida that again gave us the blues.
Everybody gave us the blues.
People was loving on. I mean, I don't know because of their lack of exposure and their weak schedule, but I know Justin Ross at Clemson was getting a lot of love. But I'm not sure
get him out of
here.
Freddie Swain, that's the kid from Florida.
Yeah. No, I don't think Swain's really in it at this point. Right now, of all the names that we just named, Devontae Smith is top 10 in receiving.
Jamar Chase from Alabama.
Yeah, and then Jamar Chase is 57 catches, 1,100 yards, 13 touchdowns. I mean, that's impressive. CeeDee Lamb is 44 catches, 983 yards. He's got the best average, though. I mean, he's got 13 touchdowns, and he's averaging 22 yards a catch.
There's a kid, Omar Bayless, right now from Arkansas State that's got 14 receiving touchdowns this year and 12,000 yards. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's cool. He's not doing anything.
Oh, no, I'm not saying he's going to win by any means. I didn't realize Devontae Smith was the leading receiver right now for Alabama.
Yeah, man. Listen, he had a couple huge games.
Yeah.
He
He did. He had that 4 touchdown game earlier in the season where they
he
decided they weren't going to throw to anybody but him.
he had some good games against LSU. I mean, he had a good game against LSU, if I recall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Devontae Smith is he's super. So for my money, I think Jerry Judy's the best receiver in the country. Well, he's the best route running receiver like his routes are so crispy. But I think I'm actually when I'm looking at the statistics here, I don't know why I thought CeeDee Lamb was having a better year than he is. Like he's pretty far down in his numbers.
Yeah, man, but 13 touchdowns and 22 yards a catch is better than everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, 900
of all the quarterbacks that's throwing the ball to those other receivers, I mean, you got a quarterback who's also getting yards with his feet too in Oklahoma. So that's probably going to kill some of your production
numbers
as a receiver. Yeah. So to be fair, that's what's going on there.
Yeah, he's only like 250 yards behind the guy leading the country in receiving.
Right.
And he's one big game away from being the leading receiver in the country.
Yeah. So I mean, CeeDee Lamb, I think is my number one, the front runner right now for the Biletnikoff. Even though the numbers wouldn't say that he's the top guy, I just think that he's having he's a phenomenal receiver. Like he's one of those guys that's a game changer. Like you get the ball in his hands by any means and just let him go out there and recognize a defensive game plan.
He's fun to watch. He's really fun to watch. I tune into Oklahoma to see CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Hurts show. I mean, they're really fun to watch together.
Yeah. So I mean, I think we probably need to just do a whole show coming up on award season on who we think is going to win some of these awards because that's one thing I think Auburn can actually win something in this year is some of these.
You talk about Derek Brown or Marlon Davidson.
That's it right there, man. If we don't have one of those guys get an award, it's criminal because they. I mean, it's ridiculous what those guys have been able to do up front.
Oh boy, agreed.
Yeah. Right, man. Anything else that you guys want to get out before we get out of here today?
I think that's about it. It was a tough weekend for us Auburn fans. Kind of move the conversation forward. I think, in terms of what else is going to happen this season, where do we go for the rest of the season? So, check us out next week. We've got some great content coming, going into a week against Samford. It's going to be an exciting game. I'm sure Gus is going to find a way to make that an exciting game.
If we don't score at least 40 points in the Samford game, I'm sorry, 40. They need it.
I think we will against them. I think
they better
against them.
What?
I got a question. Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, Caesar. Well, I was going to say before we get off real quick, Kerryon Johnson tweeted something that just kind of popped up on my screen, and I want to read it. And he was talking about Gus, and I would be remiss if I didn't. But he said, I really don't think people know how hard it is to find a consistent winning coach in this conference. Firing Gus does not automatically mean you're going to get another Saban. Please keep that in mind. Example, Texas A&M? Question mark. And that was in response to a guy named JC who tweeted out, hopefully we lose that too, assuming he's talking about the Bama game. The more games we lose, the higher chance Gus is fired, I would think.
He's not lying. That's the same thing we said last night. Is like, okay, we want to get rid of Gus. Gus definitely puts us in the mediocrity conversation for perpetuity. Like we are in college football purgatory with Gus, where we're bound to be just good enough to be in the conversation, but bad enough to never get over the top. But who do you replace him with? That's the essential question. Like, what quality coach is out there that's able to build a program consistently and not just be like a flash in the pan? And I just don't know that there are very many, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, heck, I mean, it's a little early to put him in that conversation, but PJ Fleck, what other coaches out there look like they're building really quality programs?
Keeping an eye on Mario Cristobal.
Cristobal's building a quality program. The Oklahoma coach right now, name escaping me. Day over at Ohio State.
Lincoln Riley.
Yeah. What's the guy? We were just talking about him, Arizona State coach.
Herm Edwards.
Herm Edwards. I think he's building a quality program over there at Arizona State. Like there's not a ton of coaches out there. Like who's the guy that can be a quality head coach that we don't know about. I mean, I don't really like him that much, but Dan Mullen is a quality coach. Dan Mullen he's a decent coach, man. Come on.
Yeah, man, he's tied to Cam Gate. I still think he was the bag man snitch. I'm not convinced. Him and Urban Meyer, both of them can stay away from us.
Oh yeah, no, I don't want either of them anywhere near our program. That's not my point. I'm saying that they're building.
And he doesn't have a neck. He looks weird. So.
I'm saying they're building decent programs where they are. I just don't know what coach. Who do you go after? Like, what's the guy?
I would love for Bob Stoops to come to Auburn, man.
Getting thrown around. Does Bob Stoops still want to coach?
Big game, Bob. Yeah, I know he's kind of old.
Kinda.
All right, listen, I don't want to be ageist here. I'm just saying he's up there.
I'm talking about building a program, man. Bob Stoops, 59. That's how old he is.
You know what? You don't have to build one. He doesn't have to build one. He just has to develop some talent. That's it.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to build one. It's already built. Just like Chizik didn't have to build it when he came in. The talent cupboards were, you know what I mean? Gus didn't have to build Auburn coming off a 3-9 season, the worst season in Auburn history in 50 years. But he didn't have to build it because he went to the national title game the very next year. So, the cupboards aren't empty. There's talent all over the place. It's just about maximizing talent and managing this thing right. I think that Bob Stoops could come in, with minimal effort, having a lot of success.
When I say building a program, I'm talking about longevity. How long is he going to want to be the coach here at Auburn to keep us in that?
4 years. 4 years, man, and I'm good. Like, listen, I think he can win. I think he can win a championship in 2. And with the talent that we have.
If he can,
who's going to be the quarterback?
You think about what he did at Oklahoma. He walked away and left us with a coach in Lincoln Riley who had an innovative offense, and they're doing pretty well. Like if he can get some stability, bring some stability back to where we're winning 9, 10 games, 10, 11 games a season and competing for championships, and you set off in the sunset with a solid staff in place and a guy who is prepared to take the reins, I'm happy with that.
I would be happy with that as well. But you said win in 2 years with what quarterback? Like who's the guy? You think he's going to be the answer to develop young Bo into the championship?
I'm beyond that. Listen, he can, if he comes in next year, he can recruit a quarterback, and then in 2 years, that quarterback will be ready to win a championship. That's what I'm saying. That's why
we'll be able to recruit quarterbacks with the new coach.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the quarterback, and receivers, because they're going to be like, "Yo, listen, they're doing some little quarterbacks." Yeah, it's going to improve the whole offense. And again, you've got SEC, you've got championship level talent everywhere. Just keep still, keep the entire defensive staff in place, and just walk in and do it. I think he could do it.
All right. Well,
and if you don't keep still, figure out how to get Brent Venables away from Clemson, because he did coach under Bob Stoops. Bring him to the Plains and keep the defense going.
That's it, man. I'm telling you.
That sounds like a great scenario. The first step of that, though, the guy who's in the seat has got to move. Listen. Hopefully he's tired of people calling for him to get fired, and he just goes to Arkansas. Like he just leaves. Forget this. I'm going to go to Arkansas's job.
I got 30 million reasons for you why that won't happen.
No, I don't disagree. I'm not saying he's going to do it. I'm just saying hopefully he can save us some money on the way out the door.
No, man, he's gonna squat on that 30 million until they kick him off it. He's good. He's squatting, right? Like he moved into your rental, right? Stopped paying you rent, and he's gonna make you get a court order to get him out. That's Gus.
Yeah, I wonder what other job out there he's eyeing that he's hoping he can hold out for, and make us get rid of. Like, I just don't. What's the scenario where Gus gets fired though? Like, we're gonna have to come out terrible next year.
Yeah, I told you. Midway. Yeah, midway through next season. When you don't have this defense to bail you out anymore, right? Because this easily could have been. Okay, so I made a statement. Earlier in the season. It was after the Georgia. No, I'm sorry. It's after the Oregon game. And it was kind of a little bit of a emotional Facebook rant. But I put something out there, and I'm going to reread it to you guys. I simply said, hey, Auburn family, our offense sucks. We're not that good, and this will be a long football season unless Gus figures out how to get a non-JUCO QB to play at a high level. Our line can't block, and our first-string running back fumbled 3 times versus Tulane. And before anybody tells me to be positive, all that optimism isn't going to change what's on the film, right? And I ended that post by saying, we have arguably the hardest schedule in college football without any significant improvement. It might be a 6-loss season with a $30 million buyout at the end of Gus's contract. And they did a little better, but this could have been dangerously close to a 6-loss season, right? I mean, Oregon was a little lucky. Oregon was lucky, so we could be sitting on 4 losses right now going into Bama. Realistically, I mean, they made Ole Miss closer than it had to be. I mean, they've consistently played down to the competition. I'm not feeling this, right? So I think that because they underachieved so hard, the only way I say that he'll have a little leeway is if he beats Bama. If he beats Bama, his leash gets a little bit longer for next year, right? But you already wasted a championship level defense, not even making the SEC championship game. So that leash is going to be real short going into 2020, And if Bo Nix, and remember, again, you heard it here first. He's tied his coaching future at Auburn to Bo Nix because you let the backup walk, much to the chagrin of the fans, the alumni, everybody else that's watching. Right? You let the backup walk, the popular backup, who was the antithesis of what we're seeing because he actually fits. But you yourself compared him to Cam Newton. Gus was the one who compared him to Cam Newton and then let him go. And I don't think that was fair. So he set himself up for this, right? So you let Cam Newton Jr. walk out the door. And halfway through the next season, man, if Bo is still making these same mistakes, you no longer have the he's a freshman excuse. And his development or non-development is squarely on you. That's all I'm saying. And that's why I think
you don't have the an offensive line. And you have not been recruiting at O-line for a while, and your seniors are gone. So pretty much Bo may be running for his life early on in the season.
Oh yeah. Oh man.
So all kind of we know how he does with pressure on him. Right? And you don't have a defense that'll keep you in. The defense is not going to fall off, but it's not going to be this defense we saw this year that was keeping them within strike. Basically, you were in the driver's seat even with all of your mistakes to win these games because of our defense.
Or maybe Steele surprises us. And again, it's just next man up, right? Because hell, that's what Bama's doing, or they have done for the last 10 years. It's just seemingly they send all these people.
I honestly think that our defense is going to be surprisingly good next year. When I've seen those guys, because he rotates a lot of players in, so they're getting quality snaps. and there's not a huge drop off. Like you can't reproduce a Derek Brown, but maybe a guy, because we didn't see, when we lost, what's the guy who was coming off the edge who used to get, I don't know why I'm so terrible remembering people's names.
Before,
the after that,
After him, I know who you're talking about.
Hip injury.
He left early and he shouldn't have.
The guy who got the hip injury.
He plays for the Bengals now. Lawson,
yeah. So when Lawson left, we were like, oh man, what are we gonna do on the outside, right? And then the very next year, Sensei comes in and he's a pass rushing monster, right? And we say to ourselves every year, who is going to be the guy to replace this guy? Because there's usually that one guy on the defensive line that's head and shoulders above everybody else. We happen to have two of those guys this year. And we say every year when we lose that guy, who's going to be the guy to replace him? And every year they found a replacement for that guy. I think there's some guys up front who, given the snaps and an additional year of experience, are going to be monsters up front. They're not going to be Derek Brown. Derek Brown's a once in a lifetime type of defensive lineman. But I think by committee, we can be just as good up front. The question, and then our linebackers are going to be another year more experienced. We've got young guys at the linebacking core. We talked about that last week in our linebacker show. Our secondary, we're going to lose some depth at safety, but I think we've got some good guys behind him. Roger McCreary had a really great game. Yeah. We're going to lose Javaris Davis, but Christian Touch should be back next year. For all, as much as I don't like him, Noah's going to be back next year. I think we still have some guys on the outside. Smoke Monday is still going to be there. So the defense isn't going to take as big a step back, I think, as people like. I don't know that we're going to be statistically as great, but I think as a whole, we might actually get better.
Right.
And be able to, because we're going to have more guys that have played together longer across the entirety of that defense. Offense, though, I don't see any improvements I just don't know who we've got in the coffers that's going to be able to play the offensive line. So they're going to have to go through the JUCO ranks for that. The quarterback is who he is. A full season of that, I've seen enough of that to know he's going to be boom or bust. And a lot of bust has happened so far. At running back, I think we've got some solid candidates back there. DJ's going to be coming back. We had a kid whose name, again, I can't remember, who was supposed to be a stud at running back that got redshirted because he had an injury that he had a surgery for. But I think we've got some good running backs coming back. The receivers, Seth Williams should be back. We're still going to have Anthony Schwartz. We're still the receiving core is going to be pretty much intact. But your problem is your offensive line. Where are you going to – they can't block anybody. Why does it matter? If the guy throwing the ball can't get him the ball, why does it matter? So does the offense get any better? And that's really the only question. If we can run the ball better because the offensive line somehow finds some studs, we're in a different conversation altogether because you don't have to lean on both.
They did sign the number one JUCO offensive lineman for 2020 coming in. So he'll be eligible immediately. And I think that I think it's really a really simple conversation. I think the conversation is, does Bo Nix turn the corner? Because all the things that you said about defense possibly being as good or at least equal to this defense that we're seeing this year puts more pressure on Gus to produce. Right? Like, it doesn't help it. I don't think it helps his case. I think that if we are losing the same type of games and this defense is still performing at this level, you promote Steele to head coach, and which I wouldn't mind, and you let a guy who is not an offensive mind go out and trust an offensive mind to come in and do this the right way. You're not going to go out and get a big name coach. If you're not going to go out and get a big name coach, you at least take the guy who has been consistently producing a great product on the field. Keep as much of that coaching staff in place so that you can hold on to recruiting on the defensive side of the ball. And then, try to bring in somebody exciting on offense, and let them run it and don't meddle. That's it. I think that's probably their best route in terms of fixing this.
So the LSU model.
Pretty much.
Yeah, that's literally what LSU did. Yeah.
I mean, look how it worked out for them. They're not as great on defense as they've been in the past, But, on offense, they have turned the corner in such a way that I think it's even the better route to take, because the rules to football are more offensive friendly than they've ever been. Right. So building a great offense now seems to be the championship model, because it's getting harder to play defense. Every time on the field, you can't touch the quarterback, you can't touch the receivers, you can't do anything, right? I mean, outside of 5 yards without catching a flag. So, these offenses, the old adage about defense winning championships, I think it's kind of going out the window a little bit with how they're changing the rules of football, not only to make it safer, but to make it more exciting as well. And Gus, man, his worst nightmare is that Bo makes no improvements and this defense is still playing at this level and we're losing games that we should win. That's his nightmare.
Yeah, we'll see.
I hear you. Because it's basically more of the same thing that's frustrating the fan base. I get
right.
That. I guess my thing with his worst case scenario is the defense takes a slight step back, and we're losing games worse than we were this year. Your Georgias beat you by, instead of 7, it's by 14, or
right.
You know what I mean. So it's a less of a, you can't really say we were in these games next year as opposed to this year.
Yeah,
to me, that's
no, you're right.
For him.
No, I can see that. That is definitely worse. That is doomsday, actually.
Yeah, that's his worst.
You can't make excuses for him anymore. Like, you can't say, well, if we just do this one thing, no. We clearly got beat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll see, man. We'll see. I don't know if there's any. I don't know who the guy is. Like, the Bob Stoops scenario is intriguing, but I still think that's a long shot. I don't even know if Bob Stoops is interested. And after that, where do you go? You're gonna have to go get somebody from one of these smaller schools that has been performing well, or a guy out of the NFL that you're gonna have to go get an NFL guy who's a coordinator right now and bring them in. So I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about that because it's depressing. Anyway, do you guys have anything else that you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, man. Tell them where they can find us, Ike.
Yeah. So, of course, you can always follow us on social media. The War Rapport is on Twitter and Instagram at The War Rapport, spelled all the way out, all the way together. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure you click like and click subscribe. We want to try to get those subscriber numbers up. So, Auburn family, come on in and fellowship with us on the Saturdays. Listen, misery loves company, and right now we can be miserable together. We can sit here and watch the videos together, and we can all talk about how we have hope for the future. We can talk about our hope for the future together right here on YouTube or on Facebook, man. But make sure you're clicking the like and subscribe on the YouTube channel, and we'll continue to bring that quality content to you guys. All right, that's it. That's all I got, man. We're out. War Eagle. See y'all next time.